Everybody was up probably watching the late news and saying L'chaims.
All right, Chavre, good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi Demai, Pedig Dalet, Halacha Aleph, Daf Lamed Hey. We left off on Daf Lamed Hey, Amud Aleph, second line from the top of the Amud. The Gemara now is moving on to the second case of the Mishnah of Halacha Aleph that we had on Daf Lamed Gimel, that we also may rely on the testimony of the Amoritz by the case of Meduma. Meduma is a word that's used. Meduma means mixed, a mixture. We use the word meduma when truma or trumas meiser gets mixed into chulin. That when it comes to the dinei bittul, when it comes to truma and chulin, the ratio has to be 100 to 1. When you have that ratio, the truma indeed is batel. When you have anything less than that ratio, even if it's 99 to 1, which would be the typical case when trumas meiser is removed from produce, trumas meiser is 1%. So the ratio now is 99 chulin, 1 trumas meiser. If it falls back in, you have meduma. You don't have bittul. The din of meduma is that you have to take all of the meduma. Only a kohen may consume it. Of course, you don't have to gift it all to a kohen. You have to, in our case, sell. You have 100 apples now. One of them is trumas meiser. You don't know which one it is. You sell 99 apples to a kohen, and one is gifted. Now, it's not just that you're not getting money for the 100th. You're only getting money for the 99. The 99 apples becomes cheaper because the price of meduma, as well as the price of truma, where a kohen to sell his truma to another kohen, is a lot cheaper than the price of chulin because fewer people can eat it. Right? Less demand, less expense. So there is a huge loss by meduma. So the Mishnah says that if trumas meiser of the mai, the words of the Mishnah is that Rab Shimon HaShizuri holds, this is only Rab Shimon HaShizuri, that af b'choil shoy aloi va'oichel alpiv. In other words, if it falls back into its mixture, then normally you would say, oy gewalt, I have meduma. No, since you begin with the mai, even during the weekday, you can ask the Amoritz and you can rely on him. We're going to have at the end of today's daf, at the end of daf lamed hey, just understanding why is it, according to Rab Shimon HaShizuri, and the words of Chazal are that Keshem she'emas Shabbos olav. Emas Shabbos was the thing we learned in the past two daf. I know covered Shabbos, Emas Shabbos. We touched Emas Shabbos that the kedusha of Shabbos upgrades. Al pi Chasidus, it upgrades the energy of everything in the world. In addition, it upgrades the person himself. So someone that perhaps would have been a little bit dishonest during the week will be more honest on Shabbos. Right? Emas Shabbos olav. So Chazal say that Kishem she'emas Shabbos olav came Emas hadimua olav. Don't forget, my friends, that the mai doesn't mean you have to separate Truma Gedolah. Why? Because everyone separates Truma Gedolah. Why? Because if you don't separate Truma Gedolah, there is a punishment of Misa V'dei Shamayim, and because of it, everyone takes it seriously. The mistake that the Amoritz makes, he thinks, the Amoritz, that if you don't separate Meiser Rishon, Ubederech Mamela, you're not going to separate Meiser Min HaMeiser, there's no Trumas Meiser mixed in, and there is no Misa V'dei Shamayim. That's a mistake. That's what he thinks. The emes, even if you didn't separate Meiser Rishon, since in the Meiser Rishon, 10% of the Meiser Rishon is Trumas Meiser, if you don't do that, there is still Truma mixed with everything, and you are Chayiv Misa V'dei Shamayim. Now, his mistake is only when you didn't separate the Meiser Rishon. In our case, when you separated the Meiser Rishon, and from it you separated the Trumas Meiser, and now it fell back in, even the Am Haaretz understands, oy gewalt, that there is Truma mixed with Chulin. And when you ask him, did you remove lechatchila all of the tithings, emas hadimua olav, he'll say the truth. Not always, but in this case, we can rely on him. And that's going to be the rationale behind Rab Shimon HaShizuri. Now, what we're going to have in today's daf is that our Mishnah, already implies that this is not Divrei Hakor. Right? Rab Shimon HaShizuri, really, we're going to learn now on Daf Lamed Hey that there is a brayso that quotes three opinions. And as we will see, Rab Shimon HaShizuri is based on the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer. And actually, we will paskin like Rabbi Eliezer. As implied, the fact that Rabbeinu HaKadosh brings Rab Shimon HaShizuri, which as we will see, his Shita is based on Shitas Rabbi Eliezer, that will that's implicit. Rabbeinu HaKadosh is implicitly saying that we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer, as we'll see in a moment. Now, what we'll have new in today's daf is another leniency of Rab Shimon HaShizuri. And in the second leniency, we love dafka paskin like. In our Mishnah, we paskin like Rabbi Eliezer, and we paskin like Rab Shimon HaShizuri, as we'll see. That will be the whole daf. But in the other leniency that I'll speak out now, and we'll learn it again inside, we don't necessarily paskin like. What's the other leniency of Rab Shimon HaShizuri? The case is like this: you're a chaver, you bought the muah, you bought the mai. Now, normally you would separate the Trumas Meiser from it, right? You would separate the Meiser Sheni from it. You could separate the Trumas Meiser from other produce that you already own. Produce that's Banafai Tevel. Or other Demai, really it's Demai. If you have other Demai produce, you can separate from the other Demai produce Trumas Meiser for the one over here. Really, when it comes to Truma, L'chatchila, you should separate it min hamukaf. Min hamukaf means they have to be together. But the di'evid, even though they were not together, one was in one location, one was in another location, it will be effective. Now, think about it, guys. What happens? Okay, let's give names to the baskets. I bought basket Aleph. I have it in front of me from an Amma Aretz. I have to separate Trumas Meiser. I already have basket bays that I bought yesterday, doesn't matter when. Another basket that I brought from another Amma Aretz, it's in my house. What's going to happen if I say basket Aleph, I am separating Trumas Meiser, that I have to because of the Mai, not from you, basket Aleph, but I'm designating, right, let the one apple from basket bays that's in my home. I make such a declaration. If basket bays in my home is still there, it's an effective statement, at least b'di'evid, even though it's not ninamuk. What were to happen if I discover when I come back home that basket bays was burnt? Now, I don't know when it was burnt. If it was burnt after I made the separation, I'm good. But maybe it was burnt before I made the separation. So I have a suffix. Here also says Rab Shimon HaShizuri that you ask the Amma Aretz regarding basket Aleph. Now, guys, you ask him, did you separate all of the tithings? And if the Amma Aretz says he did, you also can rely on the Amma Aretz. A third leniency. And as we'll speak out when we learn the daf inside, why are you allowed to rely on him? Here there's no dimua loss. Here there's another logic. It's called spek sveka. Guys, don't forget that the mai to begin with is a suffix. Here you made a separation. Take, you were not there. You said that from basket B, an apple should be designated as Trumas Meiser for everything that I have over here. Okay? I want to just make a parenthesis, not to confuse people. The emphasis is that my one apple is not the precise amount. Because as we keep on mentioning, 1%, when you separate from basket Aleph, one apple, how much do you have left? You have left 99. So one is good for 99. One from basket bays is not enough for 100 apples that you're keeping. You have to separate 1.1. But that's not Negeya. You did the right separation. Maybe it wasn't burnt when you made that declaration. Maybe you did separate Trumas Meiser, but you have another something. Maybe it got burnt prior. So it wasn't there for it to be used as Trumas Meiser for basket Aleph. So you have a suffix. The Mai is a suffix, spek sveka. Because of spek sveka, you can be lenient. And then we'll explain why we paskin like Rab Shimon HaShizuri in our Mishnah. Emas hadimua Aleph. And you don't paskin like we don't necessarily paskin like Rav Shimon HaShazuri in this additional case that we just quoted that we'll have in the Brisa, but we don't have in the Mishnah. This is a synopsis of Daf Lamed Hey. And now, Chadra, let us learn this all inside. I'm just sharing that we are learning this towards the end of Chodesh Tammuz Tavshin Pei Dalid. And the Hashgacha Pratis we started to learn yesterday. You also learned the 3 chapters of Rambam, Hilchas Maisis. And you see the beauty that Dafka, because we are learning Mesechtas Peah, Mesechtas Damai, I can speak for myself that I never appreciated and understood the Rambam as good as, only because the limud over here, Pashat gave us the background and we learn it, and we learn one sugya and another sugya, Pashat, to understand and appreciate, especially the first chapter of Hilchas Maisros was Gavaldik. Right? We had so much more information to better understand that Perek of Rambam. Okay, Daf Lamed Hey, 2 lines from the top, says the Gemara, referring back to the Mishnah Halacha Aleph on Daf Lamed Gimel, that Trumas Meiser Shel Demai, if it became Dimua because it fell back inside where you removed it from, it's called Shechazra L'Mekoyma. So then, Rav Shimon HaShizuri says that Af B'chol Shoyalei B'Oichel Al Piv. Says the Gemara Tani, I want you to know that really, there's a 3-way Machloikas Tanoi. And as we spoke out in our words of introduction, that Rav Shimon HaShizuri is based on the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer, which is only one opinion. But we're going to learn 2 other opinions. And let's read it inside. Trumas Ma'aser Shel Demai, Shechazra L'Mekoyma. Chazra L'Mekoyma means, by default, it created Dimu'am because you had 100 apples. Trumas Ma'aser will be 1%, 1 apple. So now you have 1 Trumas Ma'aser is Truma, 99 Chulin. Right? 1 less than the ratio needed for bittul. If it falls back inside, it will always not be bittul. So now you have the dimua issue. And indeed, midamas, it renders it dimua. Okay, now we're not saying that you don't trust the Amaretz. Since you have a dimua problem, this is the case in which Rav Shimon HaShizuri says you can resolve it by asking him. But you have to ask him. However, here's the word. Why are we insisting that this fell back to its original place? Who cares where it fell into? What were to happen if I have Trumas Meiser of the Mai and it fell into another mixture? It fell into another chulin, not mixture. It fell into 99 other apples. And indeed, says the Braisa, that if this Trumas Meiser of the Mai fell into Shaloi L'Mekoyma, it fell into 99 apples, 98 apples, but not the apples or not the produce from which you removed it. Eina midamas. Wow. Now, why eina midamas? How does that work? The answer would be that, guys, you have to remember one rule when it comes to bittul. And people that learn the dinim for smicha remember this. Midoi raisa, it's batal baroiv. Okay, even if tam ke'ikid, there's no tam. It's dry. There's no imparting of taste. There, you have to be mevatel the tam, maybe even midoi raisa. I get that. For that, you have to have shishim. We're right with the different opinions about that, whether that's midoi raisa. But here we're speaking about stam. We're speaking about a grain of a kernel of wheat. We're speaking about an apple. We're speaking about whatever it is that you're. So since midoi raisa, it's batal beroiv, compounded with demai is only a suffix. And prior to Rabbi Yochanan Kohen Gadol's times, we were not concerned with that suffix. So to go ahead and to say that you create dimua, which is a big loss on the owner, they never said it lechatchil. These are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Now, what has to be explained is like miman nafshach. I mean, you can argue Trumas Meiser of the Mai is a suffix to begin with. So if it falls into a mixture, like we just mentioned, we don't want a person to have such a great loss that he has to sell all of it for the lower price of Truma. So we say, for this, there's no Demai. Batal Beroif. Either say it or don't say it. What will be the difference whether it fell back Limikoima, whether it fell into other produce? This, the Baraisa is not explaining, the Gemara will explain. But these are the words of Rabbi Eliezer. Now, the Chachamim, which will be opinion number 2, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, which is Rabbi Shimon Stam, which will be opinion number 3, they do not differentiate whether Chazra Limikoima, whether Shaloi Limikoima. Makes no difference. Chachamim hold bein lemekayma, bein shalei mekayma. Now that the Chachamim made this gezerah on the Mai Trumas Meiser of the Mai is Truma. Tak only midrabanan, doesn't matter. But if you don't have the ratio of 100 to 1, it will always create the mixture called dimua, with the consequences will be meduma. So in other words, they're always machmed. And Rab Shimon Stam Chevre is Rab Shimon Bar Yochai is always lenient. Rab Shimon Aimer bein lemekoyim bein shelo lemekoyim einoi midamas. Okay, now says the Gemara. Let's analyze these three opinions. Rabbi Bun Bar Chia asked in front of Rab Zeira, man the Amar midamas. I get that. In other words, the Chachamim that are machmer, they're consistent. It's good. The other one that says v'she'ena midamas, which is Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, ena midamas. Nicha, all of that is good. It makes sense. You're being consistent. However, the kasha will be man the Amar, which is Rabbi Eliezer. Yes, midamas. But if it falls into any other chulin produce, not from where it came from, eina midamas mimanavshach. Ma bein lemekoyma, ma bein shaloi lemekoyma. What's the rationale behind it? And as Rabbun Bar Chia, now Rabbun Bar Chia asked the question to Rab Zeira. He was expecting to get an answer from Rab Zeira. But as he finished asking the question, or as he was asking the question, all Rabbi Chagai entered the Beis HaMedrash. And when he entered, Amrin, everyone said, the Chevra said in plural, B'deinu Meimar Mistama, Rab Chagai, who heard the question, is going to say what he always says when he has an answer. He always prefaces his answers by saying these words, Moshe da Ano Amar Taim. Moshe is Moshe Rabbeinu. When a person takes an oath, a person can say, I swear. One of the words that you can use as an oath is saying Moshe. It's like saying, I swear by Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe da Ano Amar Taim means that I swear by Moshe, I know the reason. In other words, sometimes you suggest an answer, and sometimes you're confident with an answer. In the later generations, when people, from their arrogance, say "Lefi ani azdati," which is a big arrogant statement. "Lefi ani azdati," when a person has to say, "Oh, how poor my thoughts are," that's because the person feels very highly of themselves. That's one arrogance, and on top of that, they also want to be arrogant by them owning humility, which they don't have. But to have that, they say, "Lefi ani azdati." Rabbi Shachat the Rosh used to get very angry. He used to tell a person, "You're not such a big chacham for you to need to say "Lefi ani azdati." A wise person has to say, people like us, we know it's aniyas datcha. In other words, but lefi aniyas dati, if you were to take the person by his word, which is not the case, then the person is saying perhaps, right? Or yesh loimar, yesh loimar means the ken zogin. Rab Chagai, when he had an answer, he didn't say you could say. He said, "Das is the answer." Moshe, the ano amar taima. So, that, in other words, the guys, whether they were saying this as a maila, as a chisaran, I don't know. But when he walked in and he heard the kasha, they said to themselves, "Listen, he's about to say it," and that's exactly what happened. And indeed, Amar, Rab Chagai heard the question of Rabbun Bar Chia. Like, what's the logic behind Rabbi Eliezer? And B'diuk, and Amar, and he said, "Moshe dano Amar time," and he said like this. Now, not man, because we have three opinions. Man do Amar. Everything he's saying is Bishitas Rabbi Eliezer. The gear says, my the Amar Midamas. In the case where he said Midamas, which is when the Trumas Meiser of the Mai, Chazra Limakoimot, fell back into where it came from. You know why we say that it's Midamas? Because Shehi Materes Es Hashirayim La'achila. Really, Rabbi Eliezer also holds that Trumas Meiser, since it's only midrabanan, it's only demai, it's only a safek, won't make the muah. Batal beroiv. But you have in other words, inherently, it's not something so holy that it will create a mixture unless it's batal 100 to 1. But don't forget something, my friends. The Chachamim made a gzeira that if I have a basket, let's say of 100 apples, and I bought it from an Amma Aretz that's saying he did everything, but we cannot rely on him, right, aside of the exceptions of our Mishnah, I have to remove Trumas Maisa. What was I educated? Prior to removing it, I can't eat it. Now that I removed it, now I can eat it. If it falls back into it, and you're going to tell me I can eat it, I went against the whole Demai. Like, I was told that I can only eat the Shirayim when I remove it. And I removed it. If it fell back in, I undid the removal. I saw that. It fell back in. You can't be matir in that case. That's why it's different. In other words, inherently, he agrees that we're not mach. It's not midamas. But when it falls back into it, it has to be midamas. It's perfect. In other words, when it falls into any other, even 99 chulin, because the trumas maisa that fell in it was never matir that. And that makes a lot of sense. No, it's really Rabbi Eliezer is lenient. But he says there is a limit to how much you can be lenient. You can't tell a Yid, you bought produce from Amma Aretz, can't eat it. You have to remove the Trumas Maisa. And the person did it. And accidentally it fell back in, and you tell him now everything is okay. If everything is okay, then he's going to say to himself, why did I have to remove it? So that's why when it falls back, you have a problem. And indeed, the logic was so good that Hoire Rabbi Law, don't say Loi, Rabbi Law, right? Rabbi Law is really Rabbi Ilah. That Hoire Rabbi Ilah Kahado the Rab Chagai. He paskin. No, it's the rationale of Rab Chagai was so compelling. Really, he's explaining Rabbi Eliezer. So he says, you know what? I'm going to paskin like Rabbi Eliezer.
So Rabbi Eliezer says that it falls back into your original basket, it's mutter. But if it falls
the opposite.
The opposite.
Only into your original basket. Only into your original basket. Very good.
If it falls into somebody else's basket, it's mutter.
That's right. Now, I want to say something like this, that our Mishnah, what does our Mishnah hold? Our Mishnah says, Rab Shimon HaShazuri says, that you can ask the Amma Aretz after it fell back in. Obviously, he holds it's a problem. If there wouldn't be a problem, then there's nothing to ask him. Right. But the fact that Rab Shimon HaShazuri says that now that it fell back in, if you ask him, you can rely on him, that also implies that Rebbe, our Mishnah paskins like Rabbi Eliezer. Because if we would have been mamish machmer, right, like the Chachamim that say that midamas, mamish midamas, then why can you rely on the Amma Aretz? You can argue that. It makes the most sense that Rab Shimon HaShazuri paskins like Rabbi Eliezer. So that means that really it should be butter. It's just like you can't tell a person, remove it, and it falls back in, and you're good to go. But now, if you ask the Amma Aretz again, then it's okay. Amar Rab Zaid, that also uvda kumid Rab Chanina. Such a story happened, which means someone removed Trumas Meiser of the Mai. It fell back in, and what did Rab Chanina do for Hoiri ki Rab Shimon Shazuri? He paskin like Rab Shimon Shazuri, which is that you have to ask the seller. You have to go back and ask the seller. But when you go back and you ask the seller, you believe the seller now. Those were his words. That even however, that's what paskins Rab Chanina. But Rabbi b'shem Rabbi Yonason ein halacha ki Rab Shimon Shazuri machloikis. Okay, now quotes the Gemara Braisa, in which we're going to have, like we spoke out in our words of introduction, another leniency of Rab Shimon Shazuri that, as we will explain, that's even a greater leniency than the leniency of our Mishnah. And therefore, what we're going to get to is that Rab Zeira quotes Rab Chanina that paskins like Shimon HaShazuri in the case of our Mishnah. The Gemara is going to point out that even Rab Chanina, Lav Dafke, will paskin like Rab Shimon HaShazuri in this new case. Okay. And let's go to the new case. Yes.
Right. Why don't we ask him on Shabbat?
We do. That was the first case of the Mishnah. On Shabbos, he's believed.
No, but here it says we ask him even during the week, we believe him. in this case, we wait until Shabbat and ask him.
Okay, let me word what Kavan is saying in different words. For those who don't paskin like Rav Shimon Shazuri, if we don't paskin like him, so you can say, oh my God, so now the owner has to sell the whole thing for the cheap price. No. He can wait until Shabbos.
Right.
He can wait until Shabbos. No, you can't do that. I'll tell you, you can't do that, Kavan, because we learned that the heter of asking on Shabbos is only b'shoigig.
Right.
Only
Right. Got it.
Okay. Now here's the new case. Yoisin Mikan, Hoyer Rab Shimon HaShazuri Yemi. Yoisin Mikan's Take even more. Not another case. Even a greater leniency. And we'll explain again why it's a greater leniency. Now, what is the case? Hitrish Trumas Meisen, the prices normally are more elaborate. It's not so elaborate. So, guys, let's just use my Aleph base. I buy from Amaret's Aleph, right? Chaim Yankel, I bought a basket, let's say, of apples. And it's the mine. And there's 100 apples. And the first thing I need to do is to separate one apple for Trumas Mais. I didn't remove the one apple from basket Aleph. I bought yesterday from Reuven, the Amaretz, what I'm going to call basket B of 100 apples. It's in my home. It's not in front of me. Be'emes, when it comes to Truma, you should not make a separation from another location that's not near. I know that, but b'di'evet it's effective. So I go ahead and I say, regarding basket Aleph, the Trumas Meiser that I have to separate in Sadamai is going to come, I'm going to take it from basket B. You can make that statement. I have to take, Vlad, really more than 2. 1.1, it doesn't matter. Yes.
2 point.
Yes. In other words, I'm not even speaking about what I need to do from basket B. In addition, I know that. The point is that I made a declaration which is effective when it comes to tithing. I can make just a declaration. I don't have to physically do it. But my declaration was that I'm not separating the Trumas Meiser from basket Aleph for basket Aleph, which is the ideal. I'm saying that I'm separating for basket Aleph from basket Bays. Basket Bays was not in front of my eyes. Now, if I would go later and find basket Bays and remove Shalom Al Yisrael, what happened is that when I came to basket Bays, I discovered it was burnt. Now, if it got burnt after my declaration, I'm also good. The Kohen lost. Maybe it got burnt before I made the declaration. So my declaration, you understand, was nonsensical. It was irrelevant. Vlad, you with me? No,
I just the concept of bird. Why bird?
Bird means it's not there. If it's not there, if it got burned before I made this declaration, then what did I say? I said that I'm going to take Trumas Meiser from something that does not exist. You can't make such a statement.
So you have to know.
So and you don't know. You have to, and here you don't know. You don't have a camera and there's no technology. You don't know. You have a doubt. So now you know what Rabbi Shimon Shazuri says? He says here also ask the seller Chaim Yankel of basket Aleph. Ask him if he tells you no. I separated everything. You can rely on him. Normally, we don't trust the Amaretz. Here, there's another suffix. Here, there's another doubt. Maybe you taka made a good separation. I know Kohen will get it because it got burned. If it got burned after you made the declaration, then you made a separation. So there's another suffix. Let's read it inside. It means from another location. And then you discover what we're calling basket Bays. The other locations, produce was burned. You don't know when it was burned. Now, says Rabbi Shimon HaShazuri, even here you can ask the original owner, the seller of basket Aleph, ask him, Nachamal, did you separate anything? And if he says, yes, I did, now I want to know why. Why can you rely on him? So let me just say the words. So let me say like this. In the first case of the Mishnah, we said Ema Shabbos. In the second case of the Mishnah, we already spoke on an introduction. There's something called Emas Dimua. Here, there's no Emas Dimua. There's no Dimua here.
You mean Meduma?
No. There's no Meduma here. This new Braisa, Meduma means that something that was separated, Trumas Meiser, Midrabanan, got mixed into Chulin. The Amaretz doesn't like. Once he hears the word Truma, he's going to be very careful. Here, nothing got remixed. You actually didn't even physically separate anything. What could have happened is that your declaration was made before Bays got burnt. So in Bays, there is that 1.1 apples, which is the Trumas Meiser, and then God removed it from the coin. The coin lost. There's no dimua here. You know why he's lenient? Because of Sfek Sveka. What's Sfek Sveka? The Mai to begin with is a suffix.
Right.
On top of that, maybe it got burned after your declaration. Weiter a suffix. So you Sfek Sveka, you can be lenient. Okay. Zog the Gemara that now that we discovered that there are two leniencies of Rabbi Shimon Hashizuri, our Mishnah's leniency and the one that we just quoted in the Braisa, we learned before that Rab Ze'eda said that Rab Chanina Paskins like Rab Shimon Hashizuri. So the Gemara, you should know that Loi B'da Amar Rab Ze'eda, it wasn't regarding this Braisa's psak that also Uvda Komed and Rab Chanina, that a story happened like it to Rab Chanina, V'hoire ke Rab Shimon Hashizuri. Nisht. No. When we said before that something happened and we came to Rabbi Chanina and he passed like Rabbi Shimon HaShazuri, it was the case of the Mishnah. By Dimua, we passed like Rabbi Shimon HaShazuri, but not in this case. Mishnah in this case. Now, 1 second. The Gemara will explain why not, but the way we will address why not is by going back to what we learned at the end of Daf Lamed Dalet. And what we learned in the end of Daf Lamed Dalet is that, and the way we learn Pshat in the Gemara, no matter what, when you ask the Am Haaretz, right, in the case of the Mishnah, that B'Shabbos, everyone holds that you can rely on the Am Haaretz. You never ask him directly. When you ask someone who was supposed to do it anyways, did you do it? That in itself means I suspect you. That's not the right way to ask. So we learned something called derech hakalosin. Derech hakalosin literally means in an indirect manner, in a crooked manner. Crooked manner doesn't mean crooked. It's indirect, right? You have to word it in a way by beginning, by telling him, I don't think that you're untrustworthy. I just remembered that when I went into your store, that was the Gemara statement. I saw so many customers and you got so busy. Maybe you were planning to remove it, but something happened and you forgot. You have to right away give the guy an out that even if he owns up by saying, I didn't remove the meistes, he should not look like a person who's not keeping the mitzvahs properly. You have to word it that way. Only then is the question a question. Now, let me say this by heart. By the case of Dimua, I can ask the question that way. By the case of the Baraisa, I'm already notifying the Am Haaretz that I suspect him. Let's read it inside. Amar Abovin, that loidam yahahi sheilta laihi kadmaisa, because asking the Am Haaretz, which is Rab Shimon HaShazuri is saying, ask the Am Haaretz. You won't be able to ask derech akalosin the way you could ask it in the case of the Mishnah. Because come on, in the case of the Mishnah, that what? That you removed the Trumas Meiser, it fell back in. This is what you would ask him. You would tell him, Loi begin da anoch hashalach. Well, understand something. I removed Trumas Meiser. Don't think that I removed Trumas Meiser because I suspect you. No, I don't suspect you. Normally, I wouldn't suspect you. Elamah, the same shtick. Begin the Zavnis Minach Esmel Chitim. It was yesterday that I brought from you the basket out. And B'chamis, and I saw that Oichloisin Aloch, that there were so many people standing around you, that there was such a busy moment in your store. And V'amris, so I said to myself, normally I know you would remove it, but pump, when I bought it, there were so many other people there. Dilma, the Anshisa means you forgot. Misakna, you forgot to be misakna because you were so busy with your customers. So therefore, I rectified it. And then it fell back in. Now that it's Dimua, please think about it. Maybe you didn't, maybe you did. You can ask him in a way that hakalos. But in this case, what happened over here? How do you ask him? Begin the chash datach v'tiknin. I went ahead and I separated Trumas Meiser. Ve'iskerin means, and I fixed it. So now I have to ask, Misaknan Havyan. In other words, there's a greater amount of suspicion. Okay, I want to make something clear. That the Gemara is saying that in the case of Shabbos, there's derech hakalos. Because in the case of Shabbos, I didn't separate anything yet. So I'm telling them I didn't separate. I can't do it on Shabbos. Maybe I don't have to do it. I trust you. In the second case of the Mishnah, and in the case of the Brais, in both cases, it's a bigger problem. Why is it a bigger problem? No, because I already separated the Trumas Meiser. When I'm coming with a story to him, I separated Trumas Meiser, but it fell back in. I separated Trumas Meiser, but from another place and it got burnt. The moment I'm telling the vendor, I already separated Trumas Meiser, what am I telling him?
I didn't trust you.
I didn't trust you. I don't care how I word it. Once you do that, there's no derech hakalos. So just first of all, you should understand that it's already not as good as the first case of the Mishnah. So hold on. So if that's the case, so we should never paskin like Rab Shimon HaShazuri. But there is a difference between the Mishnah's Rab Shimon HaShazuri and the Brais of Rab Shimon HaShazuri. And that is Shmuel Berei Rabbi Yosef Rabun Amar that Tani Bar Kapara Kain that Emas Hadimua Olav V'hu Oimer Emes. You're right that in the second case of the Mishnah, which is the case of Rab Shimon HaShazuri, and in the Rab Shimon HaShazuri of the Braisa, you don't have a derech hakalosim, which is not a good thing. Because once you tell the seller the Ha'aretz, I don't care what you say, you're telling him, I didn't trust you. He's going to hesitate to tell you the truth. He's not going to say you were right for not trusting me. So you got a problem. Elama, in the case of the Mishnah, why did Rab Chanina paskin like Rab Shimon HaShazuri? Because we say, Emas dimua olav. Once you separated Trumas Meiser, and you're telling him, I had it in my hand, and it fell back in, Trumas Meiser is Misa B'dei Shamayim for a non-kohen to eat it. Dimua is Misa B'dei Shamayim. Because of that, even though you're suspecting him, we can still rely he's saying the truth. Just like we learned yesterday, 2 days ago, and 3 days ago, Emas Shabbos Olav, Emas Demua Olav. Now think about the case of the Braisa. In the case of the Braisa, there is no Emas Demua because nothing fell back in. Right? What was the case of the Braisa? You said that I made a declaration that I'm going to be mafresh from basket bays, Trumas Meiser for basket Aleph. But the problem is basket bays got burnt. That's for sure. We don't know when it got burnt. But nothing got remixed in. The Ha'aretz thinks that if you never separated Trumas Meiser, he doesn't think that there's an issue with Misa B'dei Shamayim. He only thinks that if you don't separate Truma Gedoyla, there's Misa B'dei Shamayim. So the kids are, first of all, step A, step B. Step A is that we agree, like we learned yesterday, the reason why in the Reisha of the Mishnah, there is credibility to the Ha'aretz B'Shabbos, because you already asked them in a wise way. Derech hakalos. In the Sefer of the Mishnah and in the Braisa, there is no derech hakalos, which is a problem. Nevertheless, we know that Rab Chanina paskins like Rab Shimon HaShazuri. So the Gemara is saying, don't think he paskins like Rab Shimon HaShazuri in the Braisa. I'll tell you the difference. But there's a problem. There's no derech hakalos. In the case of the Mishnah, I have another svara, which is Taka White Rab Shimon says you can rely on Ha'aretz because of Emas Dimua Aleph, because you actually separated and it fell back in. Masha Enken, in the case of the Baraisa that we introduced, there is no Emas Dimua Aleph because you never physically separated anything. It never got mixed in. So you don't have Emas Dimua Aleph. You don't have the Derech HaKalos. So don't tell me that when Rab Chanina paskin, like Rab Shimon HaShazuri, I'm not going to stretch that it went to the case of the Baraisa. In the case of the Baraisa, Rab Chanina wouldn't paskin like it. Now, Rab Shimon HaShazuri does say, even in the Braisa, that you can be lenient, and we spoke out because it is a Sfek Sfeika. We have another couple of minutes. I just want to speak out that there is a big machlokes to understand what's the logic of Sfek Sfeika. What's the rationale behind Sfek Sfeika? So you have in the Rashba, you have a concept of roiv, because really you can argue a suffix, What I'm saying now is chiddush. But Rashba says something of novelty, but it sounds superficially, it sounds very easy to chap. A doubt is like 50-50. Maybe this, maybe that. The moment you add another doubt, lakula, so there's majority, let's say possibility, that things are good. That's one way of understanding a sfek sfek. However, you have in the Achrenim, the Pnei Yeshua says Gavaldik. When we say Safek L'chumra, Safek Doiraisa L'chumra, if you remember, we learned Rambam, that Rambam actually holds that Safek Midoiraisa is L'kula, Midoiraisa. Safek Midoiraisa, Midoiraisa L'kula. Safek Midoiraisa, Midrabanan is L'chumra. And Rambam holds that when you have a Safek Midoiraisa, only Midrabanan do you have to be machmer. So since a suffix, which we even when we say l'chumra is only midrabanan, if you add another suffix to it, what are you doing? Now you have a suffix midrabanan. If suffix midoiraisa is l'chumra only midrabanan, so you're being machmer midrabanan. If you add another suffix, specs faker, that's a bona fide suffix. Midrabanan. Safik midrabanan is l'kula. Go on. Chavra, to be continued. God willing, tomorrow, the new Mishnah. Halacha beis.